Hi, Sir Parag Sam. Welcome to today's webinar. Sorry about that shuffling start there. I had my usual few technical issues to start with. Looking at Brexit today and what expats need to do and what they need to deal with all the noise around the trade deal and the upcoming EU Leaders Summit coming up in the next few days. So what does it mean to expats and how is it relevant to expats is what we're looking at in today's webinar. So we've got the chat on, so you can enter your questions there. And if you follow up on this event, then people can, by registering at Product Partnership events, then people can keep in touch, and we'll update with like personal vlogs and emails on what specific changes need to take place. So welcome to the new guests. First of all, let's look at the trade deal and the noise related around that. What the trade deal means is that will the EU get what they want, and will the UK get what they want? So the UK have issued a trade deal in draft to the EU for them to agree, and they're going through it with it to protect their own vested interests. So the tariffs and the quotas that they agree within that will all be relevant to what the deal is, to make it local and national taxes, also protecting workers' rights against over-egging state aid or competition or the environment. A couple of big sticking points for the EU is fisheries, because 80% of the fishing in the UK waters goes into the EU. So there's a big business to protect there, but also the services that the UK can provide in banking, legal, musicians and chefs into the EU can be affected. So all those things are part of the trade deal that needs to be agreed with the EU, and in theory with the EU summit this week. So what we're looking forward to is potentially a large agreement to be put in place from which we can then move forward. But there will be guaranteed to be changes. There'll be changes to the rules on imports and exports. There'll also be changes to the rules on hiring from the EU. So if you want to live and work abroad, then that will change. And also, providing business services cross-border, the potential issues there. So we all need to look at that. UK have made some legal changes already, and some of those are quite controversial. But they've said that a new agreement needs to be in place by the 15th of October. So we're waiting to see if that's agreed this week at the summit. The initial soundings recently have said that they look to have something in place by early November, but it largely should be agreed. It largely should be agreed by the end of this period into the middle of November, to allow time for the legislation to go through. The UK, though, have confirmed they want to be an independent country and go their own way, which is different to the intentions of the EU. And it's about them coming up with a deal. If the UK and the EU don't make a deal, then we're going to no deal territory. But then WTO rules apply, World Trade Organization rules apply. So that's not such a bad thing. USA, Australia, New Zealand and China are already operating under World Trade Organization rules with the EU. The EU's got over 40 trade deals around the world. If they're not renewed at the end of each year on the 31st of December, those countries and trade deals revert to World Trade Organization rules. So, again, these are things that are are happening, and it's just a normal course of events, but there will be change to import and export rules, and to hiring across border and to business services across the EU. The UK has made its own bilateral agreements and put those in place already. So that's something that could develop, and we'll look how that will come. But there's a new agreement between Japan and the UK, for example, and there's a new trade agreement between the UK and between the EU and Japan. So any Japanese business in Japan, EU or UK can keep trading as it has done before with the EU or the UK. And so there's no big uprooting for them in terms of their factories and the arrangements that they're making. And the UK has also got a number of trade agreements in place with South America, Africa, Caribbean countries, Switzerland, Israel and Jordan. So there's a lot of stuff in place. So let's see how that would affect expats in terms of travel. If you've got any specific questions, you put them on the chat. We'll try and address those. How travel will change is that going into the EU, the UK will continue to have free visa travel agreements, but international rules will apply, not EU citizens. So without a residency in those locations, you need a passport that's got at least 6 months to run, and not more than 10 years old. So old passports don't cut it anymore. So if you've not renewed your passport in the last 10 years, you may need to do that to travel to EU countries from 2021. There's also changes that are going to be made in terms of the European health insurance card won't work after January 21. So it's a real change in circumstances that that exchange of healthcare and social and medical care could undergo quite a radical change. It's not confirmed one way or the other yet, but the UK is not part of the EU social insurance, welfare and coordination scheme. UK will carry on, but the countries that it's got agreements with outside the EU doesn't include any of the EU countries at the moment. So they can only be put in place after the 1st of January and will only be agreed and put in place and confirmed after the trade deal is put in place. So that's something that expats need to look out for. There'll be new travel agreements for pets. The EU pet passport scheme won't work for UK pets going to the EU and vice versa. So the non-EU rules for UK pets and vice versa could take up to 4 months. So that's something anybody travelling with their pets needs to consider. Another bizarre thing is that different countries have got different regulations. So Bulgaria, Romania, Croatia, France, Spain, Portugal, Germany, Lithuania, Latvia, all these countries have got different traditions and they come from different places. So their immigration rules are slightly different. So you may find that outside the EU, a UK expat going into the EU may need to have, in addition to a recent passport, they might, if they're staying for longer than 90 days, they might need a visa. They might need a visa to work. They may need to have a return ticket to prove they're leaving the country. And they may need to be able to show that they've got enough cash to live and support themselves during their stay in the country. All those things change, except for Irish citizens. There's a free travel agreement between the UK and Ireland that has already been confirmed that will continue after Brexit. Dates from 1949, so UK and EU expats can still move freely between the two places. So there's quite a few changes on there. Things won't stand still. It'll be a bit different. You won't be in the EU lane, you'll be in a different lane, but it will be the same. But it'd be like traveling to South America or the USA, rather than to the EU. Moving on to living and working abroad, any expat should have an EU residency confirmed. So this is a big factor for any expats. If you've got any questions on it, you can put them in the chat room here, and you can register at projectpartnership.com/events to be kept up to date with any new developments on this. If you haven't got an up-to-date residency, by that, an EU residency registration in the country that you're living in the last 12 or so years, then you need to make sure that it's up to date. But that then gives you the right to live and work abroad indefinitely for the rest of your life with your family. Not citizenship, the right to remain living and working abroad. In the UK, it's a new scheme called the Settled Status Scheme. And that allows you to join remain in the country in the UK, again with your family joining you sometime before the closure of that period in 2022. So essentially, expats need to be registered in that country of residence before the end of December to be able to get those EU citizen rights and for those to be guaranteed for the rest of their life. So that's a big thing. It's a big factor. So in some countries, it's more simple than others. Others, it's more complicated. Bulgaria, you have to go to the police station. In Portugal, to the local town hall. In Cyprus, to the immigration office, which is a branch of the police department. So it's slightly different for each country. But you have to get that registration done before the 31st of December, and then you've got the right to move on to permanent residency. With some countries, you can go for citizenship, but again, the rules differ slightly different there. So the minimum would be 5 years for countries like France, Ireland, UK, and the criteria for confirming citizenship is slightly differently. But for other countries, it can be a longer period, and there can be other complicating requirements that you need. And some countries won't allow dual citizenship. For example, Austria and Germany won't allow a UK expat to hold a British and an Austrian passport, for example. So you'd have to change your citizenship to remain as a citizenship. So by getting the EU residency and followed by the permanent residency, you can stay there without their full citizens' rights, but with the EU citizen rights that guarantee you for that. So the next thing I want to move on to, and again, if you've got any questions, put them in the chat room, is the medical cover. Now, not a lot's been said about this, but the UK have said that they want to carry on with reciprocal social insurance and healthcare agreements. They have a system in place which is exactly aligned with the EU system, and that includes some non-EU countries, Caribbean islands, for example. But the EU have not committed to the UK being part of an EU-wide scheme. So if the UK don't carry on with the bilateral agreement with the EU, and hence all 27 EU countries, then the UK would then have to make separate bilateral agreements with each country, which it can do. Tax, social welfare, and medical cover is not part of the EU remit. It's coordinated by the EU, but there's individual immigration, tax, social insurance, and medical arrangements for each country. So if you're an expat resident in Spain or Portugal, on day one, and the UK, you automatically have the right to healthcare residence from that day. In other countries, it's slightly different, and the different rules apply. So, for example, in Cyprus, you have to be paying social insurance or have an S1 exemption that moves you between countries. But the S1 scheme technically finishes at the 31st of November this year and won't be rolled over until a new agreement is made. So this is the important spin-off that needs to be agreed between the UK and the EU. The elephant in the room for me is that the UK want to get on with lots of investment in underdeprived areas and make lots of grand schemes and infrastructure projects. And where will they get that money? They'll get that money from the VAT revenue, which would otherwise have gone to fund the EU. And the reciprocal tax agreements with social insurance and healthcare are part of that financial equation. And the negotiation is to agree something that will work. So there is no guarantee at the moment that an S1 will work for a UK expat in the EU or an EU expat in the UK after the end of this year. But you sense that common sense will prevail, and people won't be left floundering around. But we're still waiting for that update before the end of the year. So anybody travelling should make sure they've got travel insurance. If you've got, and that it covers pre-existing conditions, because the EHI scheme doesn't exist anymore, then, in the worst case scenario, your travel insurance needs to cover you for all eventualities. So you need to look into that and consider whether you need to upgrade, have some backup private medical cover in place. One other thing I forgot to mention when we're discussing the change to the travel arrangements, that mobile roaming for telephones won't necessarily continue. For example, that'll be down to the individual telephone carrier. The UK have introduced a law that says that for roaming, the mobile phone companies have to notify the user once their monthly bill has gone over £45 to protect them against exploitation after Brexit. So it's just something to be aware of. So what's the implication for business? The implication for business is quite radical. Certain businesses need to be, if you've got a professional qualification or a trade qualification, is it recognised in that other country? So that's the thing that if you're living and working abroad, does what you do as a doctor or a vet, does that work in another country, or do you need to be registered? What are the changes in social insurance? If you're living and working in a country, then you will continue to be registered in that country for, you still continue to register in that country for social insurance. So if you go and live and work in France and you register for social insurance in France because you're working there, that will take you into the benefit system in that country. So by working abroad, the reciprocal EU treaty doesn't matter so much. That's more for people that are receiving benefits or of retirement age living and working abroad. But does your employer need to provide extra cover because of any limitations from the country that person's going to work in? All those things need to be factored in for business when they're living and working abroad. The trade agreements are all in place. One of the biggest problems that's going to affect businesses and individual expats is some of the regulated type of business. So I want to focus for this last piece of the seminar on banking. So some banks have already announced in the UK that they're going to close their bank accounts to EU residents. That's because financial services is a regulated business. Now, regulation can apply across the whole of the European Union and the EEA countries, which includes Iceland, Switzerland, Norway, Liechtenstein. But once the UK is outside that, the bank isn't necessarily regulated in the EU, so they then have to be regulated in each individual country. Now, that is possible if you're HSBC, a big bank, you will go through the effort of making your regulation in the countries where you want to do business. But for a smaller bank that's concentrated as a more smaller local savings bank, won't necessarily want to make that move. So some banks will end up closing down as a business practice as much as anything else, because they don't want to go through the time, money, and expense of regulating to provide services to people in those other countries. So it could be that some expats find their UK bank account closing down at the end of the year. And what that means is you'll get a check to close your bank account in the post, that your payments will be returned to sender, and your direct debits won't be paid out. So you won't have it doesn't mean that you can't use an overseas bank account, but people like tax authorities or pension payers won't necessarily pay into a bank account outside the UK. So that's an additional complication as well. So it's something that needs to be looked into by UK expats. Many UK banks now are part of the European payment system. So in the UK, there's a BACS system with a sort code and bank account numbers. The European system creates the ubiquitous IBAN numbers, but it allows for low-cost money transfers around Europe. So in theory, a pension payer, a taxpayer could pay to a European bank if their bank has got a connection through the European electronic payment system, but not necessarily. So that, again, this is something that you need to validate and check with your bank and with your bankers, because your bank may not necessarily be opening up. And also, whatever you do with the bank, you need your residency certificate, you need your tax ID and your tax registration, and you need documents to be certified in the country that they are to keep them up to date. So that's all part of a complicated system that exists anyway, with the regulated financial services, legal property businesses that need to be able to identify who's buying property, who's renting property, who's receiving pension, who's investing, and who's making business deals. Your banks want that, the pension companies want that, the life insurance companies want that. So that's all part of establishing your identity with your residency, your tax number, and certifying documents from your home country apostilled and in your country abroad. So if the UK don't have any reciprocal financial services agreement with the EU, then the UK will then have to make individual agreements with those countries again to see how that goes. So it's something to consider. Proact offer a range of services to the clients, and we offer one of those is a retainer service which covers certifying and advising on what you need for your travel, healthcare, and certifying documents for your tax registration in the UK and EU countries. So if you need any help on that, contact us at proactpartnership.com. And also, if you want to keep in touch with how things come out, how they unfold in the coming weeks. So by the end of this weekend, we should get quite a bit of movement, and then that should firm up going into November, that what the new rules are going to be made. And we then get some decisions on healthcare, on travel arrangements, driving licenses, pet passports, tax numbers, social insurance schemes, and what it needs to do. If you are a UK expat or an EU expat living and working abroad, you do need to get registered as a resident before the end of December to take advantage of the rules. So have a look at that. And if you need any help from us, contact us, but register at proactpartnership.com events to keep in touch with the changes that will be coming up in the next week or two. Tune in to us next time. You can answer questions. We didn't get any questions today in the webinar, but please feel free to ask us those at contact us at proactpartnership.com, and then we'll be able to keep you in touch going forward. Thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you again next time.